I suspect by now you have come to understand the fundamental tenets of what I've been trying to communicate. The thesis of what I'm saying is how faith occurs in our lives and how what God has to say about it. And that is simply that the prerequisite for biblical faith is spiritual understanding, and the prerequisite for spiritual understanding is humility. So over the next several weeks, we're going to look at in depth in humility to see what Jesus has to teach us about humility and to demonstrate for us. And then we'll take a look at spiritual insight and try to understand what that really is. And then we'll look at how to walk by faith with God. And then finally, we'll look at what the goal is and the end result of that walk by faith when we see Jesus face to face. So let's talk a little bit about humility this time. I'm convinced that humility is the underlying virtue of all virtues. Even today, positive psychologists will tell us that of all of the virtues that a human can have, humility is the most important because it's the foundation for all relational virtues that a person may have. If you want to flourish in this life, you need to have humility. Unfortunately, that's not a characteristic that's highly prized. It was not prized in the time of Jesus by the Romans and the Jews, and it's not prized in our culture today, except by those who are really pursuing humility. Most people are pursuing pride, and they'll recommend that you should have pride, and that you should have pride in what you do, and you should have pride in your friends or your family or your team or whatever. Nowhere in the scripture are we instructed or encouraged to pursue pride. We're instructed and encouraged to pursue humility. Jesus was the perfect example of humility, and he had zero pride. And that's the example that we want to understand and follow. It's interesting as you look at the words that are used for humility in both the Hebrew Old Testament and the Greek New Testament, you find that humility and poverty go hand in hand. The poor are often referred to as humble, and the humble are often referred to as the poor. Jesus said at the beginning of his Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the poor in spirit. And what he meant was those who are poor, who have the attitude of a poor, who are in their hearts poor, who don't think of themselves as exalted or think that they have a great deal to contribute. It reminds me of the hymn writer who wrote the hymn Rock of Ages. He said, nothing in my hands I bring, simply to thy cross I cling. When we come to Jesus, we don't come with a sackload of all of the good attributes we have. We come empty, and then he takes us and he fills us like a vessel with his character. And the only way to have the character of Jesus is to develop humility. Humility is really a divine characteristic. Many people think that Jesus took on humility when he took on flesh, but the fact is, you cannot love without giving of yourself, and so giving of yourself is a divine characteristic. So God, even in creating us, he gave of himself so that we could experience life to the full. My favorite explanation of faith comes from Philippians chapter 2, verse 3, where Paul says to think of one another as more important than yourself. And certainly Jesus was the perfect example of that, because he thought of everybody as more important to himself than himself when he took the lowest place, the place on the cross as a common criminal. So Jesus demonstrates to us that humility is a divine characteristic. So keep that in mind as we continue to talk about humility the days to come. Thank you.